Welcome to the podcast, Narcissist, I'm Asking for a Friend. This episode was such a deep and valuable conversation. Our guest brought so much insight and information that we decided to break it into two parts. What you're about to hear is part one, and part two will be out next week. We hope you enjoy.
Hey everyone, my name is Tyler King, and this is my co-host Karen Maldonado, and we are back with Narcissist I'm Asking for a Friend podcast. And we just want to come back and share some information with you. We just want to let you know up front that this is not a narcissist bashing session. We do this from a Christian perspective. So we just want to make sure that we're doing this from a place of helping you to heal, to be able to manage the relationships that you're in, and also to see if there's a way to maybe just manage it through with your family so that you can have a restoration and even for your own emotional health and healing. And I tell you, Karen, we have a treat today because we have a special guest, and I am so excited about her being on the show. Her name is Michelle Davey. She is a social worker. She does so much work to help people, and she has an amazing and powerful testimony to share about how she has overcome her narcissistic relationship as she is doing her walk in the Lord. So, Karen, I want to have you go in and talk with her, ask her some questions, and just see how we can just have all this unfold. And even through all of this, let me tell you, she did not let it get her down. She ended up becoming a published author. So we're going to talk about that as well as we go through it. So Karen, go ahead and let's start us off and help us introduce our guests as well.
Well, thank you, Michelle, for making yourself available for us to talk with you. And I can't wait to hear more about this book that you've published and get a little bit more information to, for our listeners to get to know you, your story, and see how maybe your story might be parallel to theirs in some ways. And so I think it's really helpful and it's great that you're willing to share with us today. So thank you for that.
No, thank you for having me, and thank you for that warm introduction. Thank you.
Yes.
So
Amazing.
start with Michelle, you telling us a little bit about, this is the podcast Narcissist. I'm asking for a friend.
Yeah.
Who was or who is the narcissist in your life?
It is now my ex-husband was the narcissist in my life. We were married for 11 years, together for 14.
Okay. A long time to be with someone in
Mhm.
a difficult situation. So how far into the relationship were you when you realized that he was a narcissist?
So in summer of 2022, I found out that he was having an affair. And so, my first instinct is let's fix it. Let's go to therapy. Let's find a marriage counselor. And I thought having a male marriage counselor would make him be more open to going, and he agreed to go. However, I found myself at that marriage counseling session by myself about 6 times until that last session. And the counselor looks at me and goes, well, your husband hasn't showed, for the last 6 sessions. What do you want to do? And I'm like, well, the only reason I was coming, right, is because I'm trying to fix it. So I said, you know what? Thank you, for your time. And I went back to my husband and I said, hey, I thought, you said you wanted to fix it. We wanted to work at it together. He had some reservations about therapy, which I understood. And then he said, you know what? Find another therapist. I promise I'll go. Well, hindsight now, after doing the work, I now know that's future faking, right?
Yeah.
I find the next therapist. My girlfriend referred me to her therapist. She's been raving about her therapist, right? Her and her fiance had been seeing this woman. So I call her up and I tell her, I'm looking for a marriage counselor. She says, great, I'll need to talk to you for 5 minutes, talk to your husband for 5 minutes, just to make sure that everyone is willing to do it. Well, when she talked to him, she could hear his hesitation. And then he made a comment and said, he feels like I'm putting a gun to his head. So I said, well, then we don't need to move forward, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't want you to feel like you're putting a gun, that I'm putting a gun to your head. So the counselor said to me, if you feel like you want to do individual therapy, we can move forward. But just so you know, if you decide to do individual, I can't then go back and do marriage. So I'm like, no, I'm not going to do anything because I want my marriage to work and I'm hoping he's going to come around. So thank you for your time. Literally 2 weeks later, after I'm still, asking him to go and he keeps saying, stop forcing me. I said, you know what? I'm feeling this nudge that I need to do therapy. So I reached out to her and was like, I'm ready. And can I just tell you, that was no accident. Like she was well versed in narcissistic abuse.
Wow.
Okay.
So
So I was
God put you with that particular
absolutely. It
Yes.
was no accident. And I stayed with her for 2 years. We just ended our last session in March. It was tough for me, right? But she said, Michelle, you did the work. You've done the work. You're good. If you need to contact me for anything, you can, but you've done the work.
Yeah.
So when I say it was the hardest 2 years, because first, and just her approach, and let me just say, yes, I practice as a therapist. So of course, my first thinking was, how did I miss this? I'm a therapist. I'm supposed to know these signs, right? But it starts out so subtle.
Yes.
And you're thinking you've met, Prince Charming and everything is wonderful, right?
Right.
Until it's not.
Right.
So
Yes.
I just remember the first 3 months, she focused on me getting back to self-care. I lost a lot of myself, which most of us do as women,
Yes.
right?
That's right.
We lose a lot of ourself in relationships. We're finding we're helping everybody else, making sure everybody else is good except us, right? So
Right.
I had gotten away from all the things I enjoyed. So for the first 3 months, I noticed she was really focused on, so what did you do for yourself this week? Great. What can you do more of? Who's your support system? Right? And so all I want to talk about was, no, what did he do? He did he fix? No, and she's telling me I should go walking and hiking and all of that, right? So after about 3 months, when I finally get into this rhythm, I'm back in exercise classes, I'm doing my walking, I'm feeling good about me, right? She goes, Michelle, I feel comfortable telling you this. The stories you shared with me, I think your husband fits the identity of a narcissist. So in my mind, I'm like, what? A narcissist? I mean, they're just like all into themselves, right? What are we talking? She's like, I'm going to send you some resources and I want you to read them. And when we meet again, we'll talk about them. And then she goes, does your husband have access to your email? I go, no. She's like, okay, I want you to go to a private area and read these articles. So in my mind, I'm like, am I joining Secret Service? Like, what? So I'm not picking it up, right? So I'm like, okay. So, a couple of days went by, I didn't read the article because I'm like, I mean, what kind of article is she sending me? More self-care.
Right.
So finally, something is like, Michelle, you really need to read this article before you go because this was your homework assignment, right? You need to do it. So I remember going in the basement in my office, locking the door. And when I read this article, I was like, this person is living in my house.
Yes.
It was just crazy how much I identified with this article.
Yes.
And now I'm learning the lingo, right? The love bombing, the future
Yes.
faking, right? And
Yes.
I'm like, oh my gosh, who the heck am I married to?
Right.
Okay, so I go back and I'm telling her, I read it and yes, 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 all over. Yes, yes, I
Yes.
believe. And she says, Michelle, whether you want to stay or leave, I am here to support you. She goes, most people stay and they learn how to set healthy boundaries. They learn how to cope. They learn how to adjust. And all I'm thinking is, they learn how to adjust. This is not what God intended for us. The
Absolutely.
Bible says, I have plans for you to prosper,
That's
have
right.
hope in the future, not to harm
Yes.
you. I'm being harmed. This is not
Yes.
God's plan for my life.
That's right.
And so when I say I just started diving into everything and anything I could find about it, because I'm now, right, I'm an avid book reader, right? So now I'm reading every book, every article, I'm watching every podcast.
Yes.
I come across Dr. Ramani.
Yes.
There's a book that my therapist recommended. I think it was called loving, living with, and leaving a narcissist. And I'm going to tell you a real funny story. We were going on vacation and I'm like, I want to read my book, but I can't have him see the cover. I teared the cover off and I'm reading it next to him on the plane.
Wow. Wow.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm reading it. Yeah. And when I say just so many light bulb moments kept going off, right? I'm learning and now I'm being watchful. Now I know the lingo, so I know what's happening, right? Certain things he's saying, it's like going in one ear and out the other. And it came a time I had to talk to my therapist about it. I had to come and say, are you sure I'm not a narcissist? I'm like, first of all, the fact that you're asking me tells me that you're not, right? Because no narcissist is going to say they are. She's like, why do you say that? I said, because I now feel like I'm the one gaslighting. Because now that I know what's happening to me, he's asking me things. I'm like, I never said that. No, I'm not saying that. You sure I said that? Right. So now I'm doing it, right?
Right.
She's like, no, you're not a narcissist, Michelle. You're just, I guess you're just, doing what he's been doing to you. Not saying it's right, but that's the point I got to. Right. So
it was your way of being able to cope and get through what was happening. You had to do something,
and stay in reality, right?
Yes.
And not fall back into the love bombing and let me take you on all these elaborate trips and thinking things are going to change. One of the other things you realize too is it's a personality disorder. So I had to come to reality. At some point, I had to do radical acceptance and say, Michelle, he's not going to change. This is who he is. Yes, still pray for him, right? But this is his personality. So all you're thinking, he's going to go to therapy and it's going to be this miracle and it's going to happen. It's reality. So I had to, make a hard decision. Like when you can't unknow it, right?
Right.
So
that's true.
when she started talking about we can set boundaries and adjust, and I'm like, I can't unknow what I know now. And I had this at the time, this little 9-year-old, right? Looking at me, watching me. She's seeing me cry at night. She sees my demeanor. I'm going through depression. I'm going through anxiety. I'm losing weight. I'm losing hair. I'm losing sleep. She's seeing all of this. So she knows something is wrong, even though I'm not verbalizing it. She knows her mom is not the same.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, God wants more for me.
And he wants more for me.
He wants more for me. So I said, okay, I'm going to keep doing the therapy, learn as much as I can. And I said to myself, I got to get a plan in place. And let me tell you, you're scared because you're like, can I even afford to live on my own? I've been with him for 14 years, right?
And that's the hardest part. You just hit on something, the financial piece.
Oh my God.
Trying to break away. You're trying to figure out, how do I do this? And that's where a lot of women get stuck.
Yes. So many women feel trapped because of that.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know this, but most narcissists are very successful, right? Because that's what they use, right?
Yeah, they are.
You're financially good and, you have everything you need, right?
Yes.
So you're saying to yourself, how am I going to live just on my income with this 9-year-old, right?
Right.
And I remember just looking, I said, okay, I'm just going to go look for an apartment. Just going to go look. I'm not signing anything. And I start looking and the prices of the apartments, I'm like, oh no. I ain't gonna be able to do it. No. So then I just, I'm processing all of this in therapy, right? And I'm like, I ain't gonna be able to do it. I ain't gonna live. I'm gonna have to eat tuna fish and crackers. I can't do it. I can't do it. So like 2 months after things are just not getting better, right? They're getting worse, right? They're not getting, because now he knows I'm onto him.
Right.
Because now, like, I'm no longer silent in the house, right? I'm not arguing. And, my therapist always told me, they can switch from never being violent to violent. So I'm being very intentional about how much I say, but I'm also being intentional about no more silence, no more losing my voice. I'm going to speak up. I'm not going to continue to allow you to talk to me any type of way. So he saw the shift in me. So
Yes.
I went back out. I said, okay, I said, God, I don't know what to do here. I feel like, I need to leave. It's not healthy for me. My nervous system is all jacked up.
That's right.
I don't have peace in my body. My
Mm-hmm.
hair is still falling out. I'm like, no. I said, I looked myself in the mirror one morning. I said, are you going to let this kill you? Is this going to
Oh
be your
man, that's
story? Are they going to have to bury you from this?
yes,
And I'm
that's
like,
right.
okay. So it was December 2023. I went to visit my cousin in Atlanta with my daughter. I was like, I just need to get away and think, right? Be around my
Yes,
family. And the other thing that they do is they isolate you. So
they sure do.
I have no family in Maryland. So I was like a perfect candidate,
Oh
right?
yeah,
My closest
they
family is
know.
3 hours away.
Wow.
I go visit a cousin in Atlanta. And I just remember praying. And I went to church that New Year's Eve. And I remember the next morning, it's New Year's Day now, the day after New Year's Day. And I said, I'm going to call the apartment complex again. I don't know. I just felt like I wanted to call them. And she said, Miss Davey, we did approve you for that 2-bedroom you looked at, but you never came. So we gave it away. We don't have it available anymore. I'm like, oh my gosh. She said, but hold on. Something just came up and we're actually running a special for a 3-bedroom that is less than the 2-bedroom that you
Oh
have.
Wow, that's
When I
amazing.
say I knew that was God, no one
Yes.
can tell me that was not God. And I said to her,
Right.
and I apply for it right now. And as soon as I get off the
Wow.
plane, I'm coming straight there. And that's what
Wow.
I did. I only had to pay like half security deposit. And I knew
Amazing.
that was God. I knew that was God.
Yes.
Yes. He
And
rolled
so
out
when
the red carpet for his
oh
daughter.
my goodness.
Yes,
Oh
he'll
my
provide
goodness.
a way out. He
Oh
sure
my
will.
goodness. And so then I'm praying like, Lord, you got to give me a plan because, my therapist was saying when they know you're leaving, it's really, that's the dangerous time. So
Yep.
we created a plan. She's like, don't say that you're leaving yet. Just right. So I would, go to work in the mornings, wait for him to leave. I'll put a little bit of stuff in my car. I would bring it to my
Yeah.
office. I started purging, taking stuff to Goodwill.
Yeah.
Things just started disappearing from the house. Oh, Michelle, what happened to that lamp? I don't even know.
Right.
You know what
Yeah.
happened?
That's right.
Oh,
That's
Maybe
right.
yes, like I say, like there was
yeah,
never a
I don't
leave
even
there.
know. I
Like
don't
what
know.
lamp?
And then 2 weeks before the time, of course, your heart is beating out your chest as the time is coming closer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, can I do this? Can I do this? Can I do this?
Yeah.
And I just remember it was a Friday night. It was 2 weeks before I was leaving. And I remember calling him that day. I forgot what I needed. He comes home. Now, mind you, when he's in the house, his phone is attached to his hip. He never, leaves his phone. So I said,
Yeah.
"Hey, I called you a couple of times today, but I couldn't get you." He said, "Oh, I left my phone in the truck, something, something." I said, "Oh, did you?" I said, "Can I see your phone for a minute?" And my
Yeah.
daughter is in the living room. We're in the kitchen, and I didn't know she was paying attention. I said, "Can I see your phone for a minute?" He says, "Why do you need to see my phone? My phone is my private business, and you have no right to see my phone." And when I say I felt so small when he said that, but what made
Wow.
me feel even smaller is when he went to go upstairs and I looked, I could see my daughter's face.
Oh wow.
And
Oh my
that's what
goodness.
did it for me. And she walks over me and whispers and goes, "Mommy, don't you see he's living his own private life?" She's 9.
Wow.
9.
Wow.
When I say the tears just started, and
Mhm.
this is when I said to myself, you gotta go. If
Yeah.
you don't leave now, you will never leave.
You right.
This will be her story. You will be showing her that this is what she should accept and tolerate.
Yeah. You
So
were at a crossroads
I
right at
was
that moment.
absolutely at a crossroads because part of you is still hopeful. You've been with this person for
Yes.
14 years. You
You
have a
invested
daughter
time.
together. You've
Yeah.
invested so much together. And I wish I could say it was all bad. It wasn't, right? So you're
Yeah.
remembering the
Of
good
course.
times, the vacations, the times you spent together, the times that were good. And then you think about, well, the times that weren't so good and all that has happened. And so you're absolutely right. Crossroads is a great word. So part of you is secretly wishing that something would change. Maybe he would wake
Right.
up one morning and say, you know what?
Hmm.
I see exactly what you've been saying, and
Right.
I'm going to do what needs to be right. You're still hopeful.
Still hoping.
You're
Hmm.
still hopeful.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
Michelle, I love that you brought up the part where that there were good times as well as the bad,
Yeah.
because I think a
Yeah.
lot of people, they're like, oh, well, it has to be terrible. No,
No,
there actually are going to be a mix of
absolutely.
good memories with bad memories. And I think that's what gets a lot of women stuck also, not just the
Correct.
financial piece, but you're thinking, but I did have good times. We did
Right.
do this together and we did do that.
Right.
But a lot of times with those moments, it wasn't even really about you anyway. They had
No.
their own
Correct.
desires, their own
Agenda.
selfish agenda
Correct.
and motivation for doing what they
Correct.
did. And it
Yeah.
really wasn't about you.
Correct. You
So
don't know
thank
it at the
you.
time, though, Tyler, right? You
Right.
don't know it at the time.
You help
You
them
don't.
build the image that they want to.
It's the
Absolutely.
image. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The
Wow.
time comes for me to move. And
Hmm.
I just remember, 2 days before I move, I have to tell him because I'm going with your daughter. I can't just right.
Yeah.
My lawyer's like, you got to say something. So I
Yeah.
said something. I tell him, and he's like, going through. I can't believe you're doing this. The usual blaming
Of
you,
course.
of the family, and making you feel.
Yeah.
And then, of course, trying to use your daughter against you to tell her, I want this. I want our family, but your mommy doesn't want it.
Right. Of
The
course.
things I did before I left, and I'm so grateful I did. I put my daughter in play therapy before I left the house.
Nice.
Oh, great.
Will has her therapist. They've been together for a year. She adores her. And when I say she has helped so much.
Oh,
So if you have a little kid, I would recommend. You may think, oh, your kid doesn't see. Trust me, they know.
yes.
Oh, they know. They're so
They
smart.
may not know exactly what's going on, but they know something's not right.
Of
Right.
course.
So that was one of the best things I did was before I left, I connected her to a great therapist that helped her navigate it. Because telling your daughter you're leaving and actual leaving is two different things.
Yes.
I told her because I wanted to prepare her, but it wasn't reality for her until we actually moved, right?
Right.
So her therapist helped her navigate that.
Right.
And so a couple of, I get the keys to my apartment. I move some things out. Of course, I have to tell them where I am, right? Because we have
Yes.
a time together. So I remember bringing boxes in here, and I remember him saying, you still have some stuff here. My furniture didn't come. Why don't you just spend one more night? And at that point, I had already moved downstairs. So for me, I'm not thinking nothing of it, right? I'll spend one more night. My furniture's coming the next day. So I remember waking up, I don't know, maybe 10. And I call my son. I have an adult son. And I call him because he's checking on me, right? He's making sure I'm okay.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm good. And I noticed that my truck is gone. And I'm like, oh, I guess
Mm.
maybe he went to the store. And he didn't know that I had an air tag in my truck. And so something said, pull up the air tag. And the air tag is in front of my new apartment. And I'm
Oh,
like, why
wow.
is my truck in front of my new apartment?
Mhm.
And then I'm like, oh, shoot, he took my truck with my new key on it. So I didn't say anything because at this point, I don't want him to know that I have air. So when he comes back, I said, hey, I have a coworker that lives in the complex and she thought she saw my truck. He's like, oh, no, I just went for a drive to clear my head. So I left it at that. The next morning, I'm carrying the rest of my stuff, me and my daughter. We get to the front door and my door is ajar. My apartment.
Wow.
And I'm freaking out, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not going in, right? I'm from New York. I know better.
That's right. That's right. We know better.
So I call the guy that I'm like,
Yeah.
I call my brother who
Yeah.
he's like a brother to me. I'm like, I told him what happened. He's like, don't move. I'm on my way. So he comes and by this time I have a TV. Nothing is missing. Nothing. And I'm like, okay. So I call the apartment complex and they changed the locks. But I mean, I can't prove it, but I'm leaving it at that.
Yeah.
I'm leaving it at that. So thank God for my therapist who just kept me on alert. She was like, Michelle, just be alert. Everything you do, everywhere you go, just be alert. And that's what I really was. I was, just everywhere on alert.
Thank you for listening to Narcissist, I'm Asking for a Friend. Listen in next week for the second half of this episode.